This is Dr. Andrew Bernstein, also known as Dr. Fashion. And this is a LOOKTV, everything fashion, beauty, and retail. Take off with us this week as we explore the heavenly world of flight and fashion. From the early beginnings, when stewards and stewardesses would greet you in their impeccable attire on TWA and Pan Am and Alitalia and Air France, catering to your every need. Steaks, filet mignon, champagne, caviar, like you never had it before. Well, in this episode, to the modern age of fashion, what it was like then, how it's changed, and what we can expect to see today. And with us, to delve into the deep dive of the heavens and beyond, we have the Dean of the College of Aeronautics at Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida, Dean David Cohen. Welcome, David, to the show today.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here. David, I know in our talks before, you are not the fashion guru of aviation and so forth. In your humble beginnings, you were a colonel in the United States Air Force, flying this incredible tanker, and you were part of that, where you would keep our airmen and our aviators safe because you kept them with all the gas they needed to go across the continents and through space. And we thank you again for your service.
Thank you.
And what pilots and flight attendants and the staff wear, whether you are with a carrier or with the military and so forth. But it's really interesting. I know our viewers would like to know a little bit. We're going to be talking about a little bit of the history of fashion and what people have worn through the decades, and really probably more than 100 years of aviation around the world. But I'd like you to maybe do a little bit of a deep dive into fashion. Maybe let's talk at clothing and attire that a pilot might wear, a steward, or somebody certainly who is flying. What makes it something that is comfortable, yet somebody that might not perspire so much because of the wicking, something obviously that's comfortable enough, and also flame retardant. Because again, just like race car drivers and so forth, you want attire that if you are in any kind of a fire, that you can escape, and obviously that you're not going to burn or have those kinds of problems.
Sure.
So from your knowledge of being a pilot, you are now the Dean of Aeronautics at Lynn University for our students and their flight programs. Can you tell us a little bit about clothing and attire and why it's so important, how it's changed maybe over the last 50, 60 years, and certainly how it's gotten better to protect our pilots, to protect our stewards, people who are flying, and certainly the general public?
Absolutely. You know, when human beings first started flying, we were doing so in aircraft that were not particularly designed for people to be comfortable.
The Wright brothers.
The Wright brothers, even World War I, World War II aircraft had open cockpits. And so as a result, these aircraft and the pilots in them were being subjected to tremendously cold temperatures. I watch the old World War II movies of the bomber crews, and they've got these big, thick, heavy leather jackets, which now are a fashion statement among aviation, but they were functional at the time because the air crews literally were operating in these sub-freezing temperatures and needed to be able to survive as well as function. And so not only did they have to protect themselves from the cold, they had to be able to move and man the guns, man the aircraft, whatever it happened to be. So as we've sort of now moved then into more modern aircraft, the environment in which these aircrew members are operating is a little more comfortable. We now have climate-controlled cabins and cockpits. And a lot of it sort of depends on what the intent of that particular mission is. You know, the airlines and charter companies, as part of the business they do, they're not just in it to fly, they have an image. There's a branding associated with it. Most military flight suits are actually built out of Nomex, sort of as you were describing before. Nomex is a fire-resistant material. It won't burn, it sort of smolders. Well, the intent is if the crew member happens to be in some sort of emergency situation, it will buy them a few more minutes to be able to respond and be able to survive that particular situation.
When American volunteers got involved with, before World War II, with China and Japan, American aviators who were volunteering and going over there would wear bomber jackets, leather bomber jackets. And inside, it's very exciting. There have been a lot of articles. You probably know where I'm going with this. Inside was a silk lining. If you open it up, it would have the maps of the territory in China. So if the airman, the aviator, the officer had to eject and he went down, he could use his lining as a map. So the functionality of what we've seen in the military, and using that in what we see today in dress and fashion and functionality for business wear and so forth. It's almost a dress for success that you get from the military, and the dress that we see today for functionality.
Absolutely. Even things that you sort of would think were more of just a design choice, epaulettes.
Exactly.
Right? So epaulettes, the military tends to wear as a method to display rank. For aircrew members, on most of our flight jackets, there are epaulettes, but they are hard sewn into the jacket because it is another point that you could grab somebody and remove them out of the situation, out of an aircraft. So it has a style look, but it also has a significant functionality to it.
A lot of that too, you're talking about the U.S. Air Force, the Navy, so big in NASA, and the missions going to the moon and the space shuttle over the last 60 years or so forth. But we look at astronaut outfits as well. The new Artemis mission going to the moon, and they have the outfits that will be not only the treatments that you say and so forth, but the idea where it's comfort. It has linings for oxygen and so forth, heat conductors to look at your blood levels, to look at your oxygen levels and so forth. And all that's being built in with the technology that we have today, not only for aircraft and GPS, but what will be built into outfits for pilots, for astronauts, and so forth. And that's changing a lot. Where do you think this might go in the future? I know you don't have a crystal ball or the GPS to look at that, but with functionality, where do you think we'll see that? Is it going to be Star Trek or Star Wars, beam me up, Scotty, or touch my little pin and I'm, going to another dimension? Where do you think we'll see some of that with functionality meets fashion meets dress?
I think that the technology is going to drive all of this wherever it ends up going. When we first started going to space, when we first started going to the moon, the goal was simply to allow the human being to survive. We were operating, say, on the moon in, hundreds of degrees above zero and hundreds of degrees below zero in an environment that people certainly weren't supposed to be at. So especially if you watch the old Apollo movies, the astronauts didn't move particularly well. Now, they were aided by the fact that the gravity on the moon is significantly less, so that helped. But there wasn't a lot of articulation and ability to move. That got better as we found less bulky fabrics, as we understood more about stress points on a garment where we're notionally going to start to have problems, to the point now where, as we start to see some of these SpaceX and Starliner launches, those suits that the astronauts are wearing are significantly less bulky than they used to be. They provide a significant amount of protection, but are able to do so allowing the astronauts to move. We start to, incorporate all kinds of things into our daily lives with our phones. There's no reason to believe that some of that technology won't be available on the suit itself, sort of as you described. You can start to touch various pieces of the suit to get certain reactions. There may be sensors on the suit that help identify that you're moving toward this particular portal passageway, and the door automatically opens because it recognizes who you are based on the technology of the suit.
Going back again, maybe to fashion, to retail, to what's happened the last 60, 70 years, if you go back to the 60s and 70s, even before, the 40s and the 50s, when flying was so elegant, you would go up the stairs, as we talked about, the Skyliners of Pan Am and Eastern Airlines and TWA. You're welcome into a different world. the flight attendants with their beautiful scarves and their two-piece suits and pantsuits, the captains with their braiding and so forth. You felt like you entrusted these people because they just looked so elegant. They looked like just people who would guide you in case there was an emergency, just how they dressed and how they looked.
Sure.
We've seen that changed a lot. Obviously, Armani, who's styled for Alitalia. We've seen Ralph Lauren, who's done, designing for Delta and other airlines. And we've seen all these designers create the uniforms for pilots and flight attendants all around the world. In Asia, we see a lot of Asian designers do it for Singapore Air and so forth. As we move on, do you think the branding, the style, and the look of what the staff, the pilots, and everybody wear is going to be something important for people feeling the confidence of, where they are, the surroundings, and that airline? Or do you think that's just really kind of changing, or maybe doesn't have the importance it once did? Because again, we get on the plane, we go through TSA, we wait 3 hours to get on the plane, you just want to get on the plane and so forth, rather than maybe going to a Spirit airline and seeing the yellow planes we know we're going to take off, and the flight attendants in the yellow and black flight attire. Do you think that relationship in our mind and so forth with where we're going, how we're getting there, and sort of the psyche of the elegance and sophistication of what people are wearing, how it's branded, is something that is not so important as we move forward? Or do you think it still has an importance for consumers and people who are flying for the future?
I think it definitely has an importance, especially from, again, a branding, a marketing perspective.
As we finish up today on the Look, can you give our Look viewers just something to take away, that whether it's fashion, aviation, something that maybe you'd like to share with our viewers all around the world on anything aviation, could be fashion, retail, that you'd like to share with them as we leave you today?
I think the big takeaway that I've always understood, and it's really in any sort of field, technology and scientific endeavor is really going to start to continue to drive everything that most industries do.
What students today, we all certainly appreciate it. So thank you, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to the Look TV. This is Dr. Andrew Bernstein, also known as Dr. Fashion. And this is Look TV, everything fashion, beauty, and retail. And with us today is Meghan Dempsey, graduating in December from Lynn University with her BS degree in fashion marketing and management. Meghan is a pilot who has also gotten her certificates, flight time, and everything from the College of Aeronautics at Lynn University in Boca Raton, Florida. So Meghan has combined fashion, retail, marketing, and management, and also aviation to really explore a new field, fashion and aviation, which we're going to be talking about today.
When it comes to fashion, I've always known I wanted to go into it since I was 9 or 10 years old. When it comes to aviation and flying, it wasn't really until my senior year of high school that I decided to, pursue it. What got me interested in it is I was watching a lot of YouTube videos and was really fascinated by all the different instruments and the procedures. So I decided to take a local discovery flight at my flight school, and that's when I caught what they call the aviation bug and fell in love with flying. My private pilot license, which is the first step in your flight training. And so I got my private pilot license down in Stewart Airport in Florida, and I still wanted to pursue fashion. So I was looking around at different colleges that have a business program and a flight school, and Lynn was the only one in Florida that had both a fashion business degree and a flight school. So I thought, oh, this is perfect. Like, that works out perfectly. So I've been at Lynn University ever since. And right now I'm currently working on my commercial pilot license so that I can get paid for hire and continue further with my career.
Moving forward, Can you tell us a little bit about fashion and aviation? Maybe give us a little bit of a future where we might be going with this.
Yeah, sure, of course. So it's always been with the when it comes to pilot uniforms, it's always been, the traditional white with like, the front pockets and the yellow epaulettes. And what we're recently seeing, what companies are shifting to is a more practical uniform and one that sort of focuses on the brand's identity more. So for example, like airline like JetBlue, instead of their uniforms being all the standard white with the yellow epaulets, they have moved in recent years toward, blue shirts, not as many pockets. Because what I found too from wearing like the epaulet uniform is that a lot of the pockets are just kind of unnecessary. I guess, from the past, they thought, oh, let's add more pockets so it'll be more practical, but it really isn't. It just has no use. So, a lot of them are kind of just simplifying the uniform, choosing colors that go with the company's main colors. Like JetBlue, there's this blue, and then the epaulets are like a darker blue. There's also more on the private side. Companies are even simplifying the uniforms even more, where they're doing a more of a sport look. So polos that are either made of like nylon, polyester, spandex, so they're more sweat proof, and simply will either be like a neutral color and have the company's logo on it, which I think it's a very smart move because I don't think it's really talked enough about how, in cockpits, especially in the smaller aircraft, they tend to be very hot until you start the engine and the AC starts going. So there's also been a move in more recent years to more like sweat proof, sort of cool fibers to help, keep pilots cool and all. When it comes to the flight attendant side of things, again, usually it's more so, keeping it simple and, with the company's colors and everything. When it comes specifically to women's uniforms, I know there's been a lot of talk about how for them, there's not enough pockets for, practical use and everything. So I think in the future, when it comes to that, whether it's the dresses or the skirts or the blouses that they offer, I think it would be more practical to have pockets and more ways for, flight attendants to be able to carry stuff.
I think that's great. What about serviceability and sustainability? I know these things are areas that you studied in fashion, in marketing, and also in aviation. As we move forward, sustainability has been so important to everything that we are doing. How we dress, aesthetics is so important as well. And serviceability. How important are these? And do you think these are the buzzwords that we'll be seeing more of? Designers and people in the aviation and fashion field will be working with pilots and with designers and so forth as we move into this.
Yeah, I definitely think airlines and aviation companies overall are becoming a lot more focused on that because the public demands more of it, that every sort of sector of their business is more sustainable. I honestly, I'm not sure which companies have implemented sustainable uniforms or not, but it's definitely I feel like companies in the future are going to be held more accountable and they're going to want to know, okay, you have so many pilots and flight attendants, like where are you sourcing the materials, how sustainable and practical they are. So I definitely think in the future it's going to be more important that they shift their focus to it.
Do you think we'll get back to the glorious golden years or yesteryears of travel when women and men came really in suits and elegance for 4, 5, 8 hours traveling somewhere and looking their best?
Yeah, I genuinely hope so because I've looked back on some of the great flight attendant collaborations. What comes to mind is Pucci, who had designed for, I believe, Pan Am in the 1960s and 70s and made amazing futuristic outfits. And I think for a lot of aviation companies, if they want a stronger brand identity, I think it's a really big opportunity for them that I think more of them should take advantage of. I do hope in the future that, you know, a lot of designers collaborate with different airlines and companies, but it can be very difficult in the airline industry because their profit margins can be very slim. So designing a pilot or flight attendant uniform that's very couture and intricate comes with additional costs, which is why a lot of the times, especially flight attendant uniforms, are usually very simple and they're just one or two colors and maybe it's sort of like simple design because when you get down to the numbers, you know, adding a lot of like intricate details and all, it adds up very quickly. So it is also sort of an economic problem as well that, you know, companies have to be really conscious of profit margins. But hopefully in the future, companies, maybe more so on the private sector, can find a way to implement, you know, more fashionable uniforms for everyone to wear.
And in the future, Captain Dempsey, female pilot to be,
Yes.
captain of regional or private airlines and so forth. Captain Dempsey, Meghan, what do you see if you could change aviation fashion for the future? You were talking a little bit about that. Can you just give us just a little bit of in your crystal ball, what it might look like?
Sure, yeah. So I think definitely I see it going more sustainable, more futuristic. When it comes to pilot uniforms, in the past they've been a lot more have like a masculine look to it because it is, you know, being a pilot is very male dominated. So you would see obviously the traditional uniform where you'd wear a tie and then you'd have to wear like a men's style coat. I see in the future more of it being a more gender neutral sort of uniform. So having the option whether you want to wear a tie or not, whether you want to just wear no tie and just having it be more gender neutral. When it comes to flight attendants, there's a little bit more flexibility, obviously, because there's more design options.
So the next time in the future, you get on a regional airline, maybe on a private jet, and this really attractive female pilot comes out and smiles and greets you, it could be Captain Meghan Dempsey, who is out there flying you safely and soundly somewhere in the US or maybe somewhere around the world. Meghan, it was so great having you on the Look TV today, and really your words of wisdom and inspiration. And we all really thank you for getting into two absolutely separate fields, flying, aviation, and fashion and marketing, and really bringing them together. This is a field that needs more exploration as we move forward, and we're really excited that you've given us a start where fashion and aviation meet for the future and how we're getting there. Great to have you on the show, Meghan. We wish you all the best in up and away and flying wherever you're going, and we'll be there with you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Meghan. And we'll be right back.